Hello. Hello, everybody, for joining us. Thank you. I'm Deanna Bryan, Hope Bay HIE, and I'm here with Annie Gunning, our certified child life specialist. And we are here today to talk to you all about family advocacy. We'll get into it soon, but let's say hi to Annie first. Hi, Annie.
Hello, good to see you again. Hello, everyone.
Yes.
We're glad you're here. I'm here again just to talk today a little bit more. I think we're highlighting advocacy this week or this month. So I am here today just to talk about the child life perspective of advocacy.
Yes. And we are just kind of on the tail end of another Q&A, a medical advisory board Q&A we had yesterday, where it was all about parenting through trauma, but advocacy came up so many times throughout that conversation. And like a key moment was really, we preach it, and we say, let's do it. But more often than not, we just don't really have the tools we need in order to do it effectively. And for so many reasons. I mean, right, there's so many variables and there's so many, it looks different for everyone. I mean, when you think of HIE, there are so many impacts and outcomes and ranges of what could happen. So you could try to be advocating for yourself. You could try to be advocating for your medically complex child. You could try to be advocating for the emotional well-being of your child or siblings of that child. There's just so much that goes into it. Are they verbal? Are they nonverbal? And so while we probably just don't or can't just get into the really like all those crazy nuances, we can have still a really productive conversation today about what advocacy looks like. And then at the end of the day, you're available. People can reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I have talked to a couple of families because I am available to all our HIE families virtually for conversations, Zoom calls. I've had so many families that I've talked to recently and they're like, I don't know what I can say, or I didn't know if I could say that. I didn't know I can ask for that. And I'm like, you can ask for X, all these things. And I list them out and they're, and they're just kind of surprised. So I hope today will kind of give a little bit more information. And like you said, it's all individualized, but hopefully today will kind of help guide families a little bit more in feeling that confidence and advocating for themselves and their kids.
Yeah. And just, knowing that they're able to, or that it's even an option is kind of the first step, right? So we'll get right into it. And as always, just for people who don't know or need a reminder or still trying to learn and understand, can you tell us what a child life specialist does in general, and then specifically maybe how you kind of service or hope for HIE families as our on-call child life specialist?
Yes, absolutely. So as a child life specialist, I mean, just a little bit of my background that I've worked in a hospital or healthcare setting for about 24 years. And our job is to help children and families cope with stressful situations that typically involve something within the medical setting or healthcare setting or hospital. So that's providing education for a new diagnosis or a chronic diagnosis through medical play and creative expression, help develop those coping skills. We helping with advocacy. That's one of those things. So anything that we can do to help a child understand, process, and cope with their experience while also decreasing that fear, that anxiety, and that pain is going to help their experience, which is just going to help, the healthcare team and the family work better together, which is always the goal. And that includes families or siblings and parents as well. Like I also work with siblings. I've worked with siblings in the hospital too, because we know that when you have one person in the family that is affected by an illness or, diagnosis, whatever, it affects the entire family. So we are there to help support siblings as well. And then with Hope for HIE, it's all virtual. I do Zoom calls, phone calls, emails, and resources to families all over the country or the world, help prepping for different procedures. I feel like I've done a lot of EEG preps and helping kids and parents learn to prep their child beforehand, talking through those coping strategies for different unexpected procedures and tests that are coming up, or those long-term stays or changes that they've had in their healthcare recently. So I am available to help with any of those things as well.
Awesome. So there are so many different types of advocacy, but we're going to begin with talking about advocacy in a medical type of setting. So our first question for you today is, from a child life specialist perspective, I almost got tripped up over my words there. How can a CLS or a child life specialist help improve the collaboration and communication and just overall partnership between families and their healthcare teams? Because as we all know, sometimes there can just be a disconnect, or there can be a lot of fear in asking for what you need, or there's a lot of medical jargon. So overall, how can that communication and collaboration be enhanced?
Yes, definitely. I do like to think of us too as we're kind of like decoders too for families. So I can talk a little bit more about that. But as a child life specialist, part of my job is to make sure parents know that their voice matters. We want to give parents the knowledge and skills to advocate on their own. So we are trained collaborators, and we can help you come up with a plan with the healthcare team based on mutual respect, that open dialogue, and sharing the decision making. So part of that comes with, let's identify the issue, let's talk about some possible solutions, and we need to find the appropriate healthcare team member, because there's so many. You meet so many people in the hospital, and so we can kind of help. Maybe the physical therapist is the best person to talk about this issue, or we need a respiratory therapist for this. So we can kind of be that in between and help you find the right person, because it is so overwhelming and there's so much. And it can be very overwhelming as an advocator for caregiver, as caregivers being the advocator. That's an emotionally challenging thing to always be doing. So we are there to just help support the caregivers as well. Like, validating your feelings. I know sometimes I feel like that's thrown around kind of easy, but it's really important. What you're feeling and what you're doing is hard, and it's challenging, and it's valid, and you need support too. So there's ways we can help support you. And can we find somebody to help give you a break during the day? Is it a volunteer? Is it, is there somebody else that we have within the hospital that can help? That's important. It may seem small, but for some families, that's a really big need. And then what are some connections in the community? What are some resources? What are some peer connections? We can help with those things and just give you those resources that you might need as well. As I said, we're kind of like the decoders, and we're also like the educators. So we do all this education with kids on their diagnosis and what's going on with their body and things like that. But it's also important for the parents to understand what's going on. So our job is just assessing the room and the psychosocial part of the hospitalization. And once I can kind of get my assessment, I'm like, I know that I need to do some extra education with that parent based on maybe their reactions, their questions they're asking. And our job is to help provide that. Decode that medical information, break it down into retainable information, because we know you only retain like, I think it's like a third of the information you're actually given. And just kind of a brief story. I worked at a HEMOC clinic, and I was teaching like a 4-year-old little boy about leukemia, and I was doing blood soup. So I spread out all this stuff on the floor, and I'm doing all these materials, and we're talking about healthy blood cells and sick blood cells and leukemia. And after we were done, the mom was like, "Oh my gosh, I totally understand leukemia better. Not that you did this, And I was like, "I'm glad you were sitting here for this." She's like, "I just feel like I have a better understanding of it now." It's because you're just getting so much information all the time. So not that I'm going to sit there and do an activity with you, but just breaking that information down so then you can make an effective coping plan. You know the questions to ask. You know how to advocate for your child. You know what they need and what's going to work best for them. It's just kind of breaking it down.
Right. That's such a huge part of it too. I mean, and realistically, in doing something that helps one person, it has the domino effect. Like if you break down, like you said, if you break down information for a child or a sibling, ultimately someone else is going to benefit from that information too. So speaking of siblings, and medically complex children, because advocacy isn't always just about the parent or the caregiver. We want to give kids the tools and, empowerment to do so as well. So what are some developmentally appropriate ways that we can, or parents and caregivers of CLS can empower medically complex children and their siblings to advocate for themselves?
Yes, definitely. We want to teach the kids, but we want to give them the skills to do that themselves too, especially for when we're not around to be there with them to help them, or they have to do something more on their own. So by helping them with the coping skills and helping them through a procedure, we're also empowering them to do this on their own, which is really our ultimate goal. If a parent or a family member comes in and they're like, we don't need you, we got this, and they get through it, like, that's my ultimate goal. Like, that's a great compliment, right? That kid's doing it on their own. So some of the things we can do is when I'm working with a child, we develop like a script we kind of go through a whole scenario of like a role play of what the procedure is going to be, and give them the words that they can use to ask for something, and let them know, you can look on my right arm first. Can you look on my right arm first? Or that tourniquet that everybody hates, can we put a washcloth under it? Can we put a tissue under it? Can you do it on top of just like my sleeve like this? Those are all options. You can ask for all those things, and you have a voice, and that's your body, and you can ask the nurse to do those things. That is okay. And I think sometimes they just need that permission to ask for that. So if we go through and practice it, they begin to feel a little bit more confident about doing it. Give them viable choices. That's important too, because the whole process is like they're getting their power and everything taken away. They're in a situation where they're not given control. So we want to give them some control back. By giving them that control back, that does help them feel empowered in their healthcare, in their body, and their decision making. So viable choices. Don't ask, when somebody asks, can I listen to you? I'm like, that's not a viable choice. Listen to your front and back first. Like those little, I know those seem so tiny, but it's giving them those choices. Yeah. And then preparation. We've talked about, I feel like I've talked about preparation in probably every Q&A.
It's okay. You have to say something like 7 times for it to fit. But
it's so important that it helps, because if you prepare them, then they can process it. They can ask the questions, and that helps them feel empowered in knowing what they're going to do. And they can ask the questions to know what's happening to them, and then make the choices and ask for things. Like, that's all part of it. Like, it all just goes together. And then it's important.
And I remember.
Go ahead.
It's so rude of me to interrupt you. I remember what you said a couple times ago, where like that preparation looks different for age groups too, right? And like some, like the older the kid, maybe the earlier they can know versus the younger or developmentally younger the child, maybe the later, So you can tailor it. Yeah. I remember. See, I listened.
I know. Yes, Deanna. No, and I was going to touch on that too. That's part of like my communication part with advocacy is like, I'll get into that. I don't want to skip ahead. I have one more for my siblings, and
that's why I should just like zip it. It's like I just get so excited. It's like, can I get a gold star, please?
Yes. And then developing a coping plan. Like, this is again all part of it. Like, develop the coping plan with them. Let them choose where they want to sit. Let them choose what they want to bring, what music they want to listen to, what show they want to watch while they're doing it. All of those, again, tiny things, but include them with the coping plan. What's going to help them? Do you want me to tell you the day before, the morning of, 2 days before? That's including them, and that's giving them that power and that control as well.
Yeah. So I know that, every family circumstances are different. Like I said before, there's a range of impacts and outcomes of HIE, and advocacy looks different. So we really want to spend some time touching upon like what advocacy looks like if you're a parent with a nonverbal child, whether they just, are nonverbal, or they are just developmentally are so young that they can't speak yet, So what does that look like for the parent? What does that look like for that child? And is advocacy, obviously we know it is, but is it still possible, and how?
Yes, absolutely it is. Like, as the child life specialist and I come into the room to meet the parent and the child, I want to learn everything about you and your child, because that is going to help me come up with a better plan, like coping plan, and just kind of understand their needs and what direction they need to go in, and where they might need more support than others. So when I first start having that conversation with the parent, things that I'm asking, how does your child learn best? So that's an important thing for people to know. how do they learn best? Is it pictures? Do they need to read something? Do they need like materials? Do we need to play through it? Do we need to do it a day in advance? Do we need to do it 4 days in advance? Like that's stuff that the parent needs to knows, and that they can share that with the team member, and that helps. Those things are really important. And what's their communication style? Some kids don't have words, but they can still understand what's going on. And their communication might be like grimaces in their face. Like, you know what your child's pain looks like. You know what their calm face looks like. You know all their different responses. What does that look like? Because we need to know that. I want to know what that looks like. That's their communication style. And is your child just in general, like just quiet, doesn't like a lot of people in the room? So I like to use all these things, talking about their fears, their coping strategies. We talk about all these things, and you share these with the child life specialist or the care team. I've made like all about me posters and put it in the room. That way, every time you're not like, they don't like you to come in and immediately touch them. They want you to sit on the couch first in the room. Like all those little things, like the child life specialist can help you come up with that all about me thing of basically like the strategies for coping with being in the hospital, or the things that help me best. Be in the room so that all the healthcare team members see it, or they can put it in the chart. So it's in the chart too. But that's definitely some ways that I think parents and child life specialists can work together. And you can make your own at home. You can just write up, my child does not like XYZ. They communicate best this way, things like that, and keep it in their room.
Yeah. We're going to segue now into like advocating again for the whole family, but more specifically, I really mean like how can a child life specialist, how can we support families where they're dealing with one child's medical needs while also caring for other children, because and for themselves, because that's a huge responsibility, and it can be like emotionally burdensome. So what are some advocacy tools that we can equip them with to kind of navigate those circumstances?
Yes, I think as a parent, you can, first and foremost, I would say you can ask for the child life specialist when you're in the hospital, right? Like that's what we're there for. We're there to help your family cope. And the siblings are no different than the patient that's there. We want to help them cope and understand as well. So you can always ask them. Like I would come into your room and talk to you about how you can prepare them for what's going on, appropriate language to use and appropriate words to use to talk about the hospitalization, and then give you ideas to keep them connected, right? Like whether that's we do FaceTime stuff or write letters back and forth, and help facilitate visits too. Like there's so many protocols, and hospitals do different things, especially now that we've had COVID, things are different. You never know what's going on and what rules are there. But child life specialists can help the family just facilitate those visits to make sure those connections with the siblings are still there. Those are very important connections that they need to maintain. And just as a family, you need to know what's going on with they worry, they're scared. And so maintaining those is really important. So as a child life specialist, we can help, we advocate for the family to get those siblings in for an hour visit, for whatever, however long we need to do it.
Yeah. And
I know you've worked in resources too. Like, I feel like I'm always giving families resources, just to help their child the siblings understand what's going on and things like that. So these are just all things you can ask for. I just want you to know they're there, and we are here to help you with those things, whatever kind of questions that you have.
Yeah. I know that you've worked with a lot of families, a lot of parents and caregivers. And so you probably have a lot of tools when it comes to knowing how to help them balance their own like well-being with those of their family members and those of their medically complex child and their siblings. So how do they go about doing that?
Balance their own, what they have going on with their kids. Yeah. I think I think you have to lean on your friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, and I've told families and talked to families before, like, you don't have to give every family member an update about what's going on. You can pick one family member, give them an update, and be like, can you share? Or, every family is different. So giving those suggestions and ideas per what that family has going on, I am there to help you problem solve and come up with solutions for your well-being. So anything to help make that coping better.
We can talk about this too. We can go into like supportive tools and resources, because maybe we can transition into like the podcast.
Yes.
And like those episodes.
Yes.
So I feel like talking about that will answer that question. So like, what are some supportive tools and resources, when you are a parent or you are a caregiver and you feel alone and you feel disconnected and it all feels so overwhelming? Where can they turn to aside from you? What are some other avenues that they can take to finding that support that they need?
Yes. And I'm going to share, as part of Hope for HIE, I'm also affiliated and work with Child Life on Call. And I've shared this before too. We've shared this in our takeaways after that. All of our Hope for HIE families have access to this free Child Life on Call app that has, Child Life on Call in general has podcasts that is parent stories. So it is a great way for parents to feel connected to another parent, hear other parent stories. There's often resources in there too. But even if they don't have the exact same diagnosis, sometimes just those similarities of stories help with the connection so you're not so alone. And I'm going to go into a little bit more of the things and some of the stories that I thought might be good. But one of our parents, and she's episode number 211, it's Lindsay. Her son had kidney disease and ultimately just recently had a transplant, but she shared that this is from her. Sometimes we feel alone as we navigate being a caregiver. Listening to podcast episodes gives us a way of feeling connected with other families who understand the complex healthcare journey you're on with your child. Sometimes it doesn't have to be the exact same diagnosis, but shared or similar experiences can provide comfort and connection with other parents of various medical complexities. So that was just kind of her own experience in having this podcast as a resource. Mm-hmm. The other ones that I have found that I think are helpful, and again, you can just go to podcast Child Life on Call. Sometimes there's professional ones in there, but most of these are parents. So there's How to Support Siblings. There's HIE, Betsy's story is on there. There's a daughter with infantile spasms, and Deanna will put all of these on. I have them numbered, and Deanna will put these all in the takeaways. Personal growth, NICU, and shielding siblings. And then there's a couple other resources for that are on the app for like being an advocate for your child.
Nice. I know that you also mentioned just like more kind of just like global universal tools and resources that are just helpful to have, something about a coping toolkit. So what does that look like, and how is it used?
Yes, I love having I'm always telling parents, just keep like an extra bag in the car. You never know when that unexpected thing is going to happen. And you're at the doctor and like, we actually need you to go over to the hospital for this test, or you need to have this going on. So having a bag in the car with maybe some sensory toys or an extra comfort item, some snacks, like easy travel kind of games, or light up toys, or, transferable sticker games or something like that, right, that are only for the hospital. That way you have that bag, you have some newer kind of distraction stuff that maybe the kids haven't used recently. So it seems like a newer kind of fun thing. It might be a little bit more engaging, but I do like having that in the car, just like, because you never know what could come up. And then my other idea that I love is, again, the Child Life on Call app. It has a whole glossary, and that is specifically for, like, when we have the app, it's personalized for Hope for HIE. So it has a lot of very specific Hope for HIE stuff on it, but it has a whole glossary of terms. So you could click on EEG. It'll tell you if you've never had an EEG, if your child's never had an EEG, and you're really not sure. It will go through what it is, why you could be getting it, the steps, and how to advocate during an EEG. And then I was going to show you, and I think Deanna can help me with this, how you can make a coping plan on the app.
Yep. Let's get it. Do you see it?
Yes.
You see what the coping plan looks like, right?
Yeah. Okay. And so like when you go on the app and you click on procedures and you click on, what did I do? Oh, I did swallow study. So I would click on swallow study and it'll tell me everything I need to know about a swallow study. And then there's a place you click on coping plan. And so you can go and click on, can you scroll back to the top? You can name it. So you know it's going to be a swallow study, and environmental preferences. So it has a whole list of things you can click on of what's going to be helpful to your child. We have a caregiver. We want the caregiver in the room. We want staff using soft voices because maybe everything's overstimulating, which it typically is in a hospital or emergency or something like that. Right. Limit the number of people in the room and have one voice at a time. And then we have choices during the procedure. Again, it's like a click, 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 what's best. And then there's a space where you can add your own things as well. And then there's another section for choices after the procedure. After you put that information in the way you want it, that's custom for your family, your child, you click save. And then you have that in the app for coping plan. So if you're coming up for something and you can have my phone, I can click on, let's see, my Child Life on Call app. I can go to procedures and you can, you have it all there. So I was talking with a family the other day and we were going over all these tips and what she could do for the EEG. And she was putting everything in. She's like, I'm not going to remember all this stuff. So I sent her a recap and then she was going to put it on the app and there's a journal section. And just so she could have it all kind of right there. So she could remember just the different things we had talked about. So it really is a cool tool just to kind of have to look up when you're having those unexpected things come up because it's all vetted, reliable resources.
Yeah. That's awesome. Let's see. And I know that you also wanted to end with kind of just like, I kind of call it like the Advocacy Bill of Rights. I've come to call it too. Just like, what are things that parents and caregivers are entitled to in terms of like, what can they ask for when they're advocating for themselves or for their kids? I know that you had a list of things that you want them to be able to know.
Just kind of run through these, but Deanna's going to put these out there that are very nice and neat and concise that will hopefully be easy for you guys to read and use. So parents advocate for participation in your child's medical interventions. Comfort holds, distraction, other coping techniques. The comfort holds chest to chest. Like I was talking with the parents the other day about the EEG. You can lay with the kid in the bed. You can lay with them chest to chest. Like they don't have to be laying down and hold them down. We can work with that. You can ask for a different doctor or nurse. A numbing agent for a needle poke. Those are options as well. Alternate focus or an anxiety provoking procedure. So what kind of distraction is available? What can we do? Do you have a child life specialist available to help with distraction and preparation? Your cultural values to be upheld. A child life specialist. Privacy for your teenager. This is huge for teenagers. Teenagers need this. They like the door closed. They need to be covered. For the hospital, that's not a big deal. We're all used to that. And teenagers aren't. They deserve their privacy and they can have their privacy. A sign on your door, let the staff know that your child is sleeping.
Add more to the Canva that we made for parents, like having advanced conversations when it comes to like approaches to care, access to support services, like a social worker, all these things. You had mentioned like if a change is coming, like you deserve to know that change is happening, if there's a change of plan or whatever. And then as you've kind of hit upon this whole time, like you said, proper education and training for like a discharge, a hospital discharge, for instance. How do I care for my child at home when I'm no longer in that medical setting and I need help?
Ask questions. You're allowed to ask anything that's, and I tell kids this too, anything that's happening to their body and they don't know, you can ask. That is your body. You can, I feel like that's when they get a little bit nervous and scared because they don't know, like they just feel intimidated. but that's where that role rehearsal and giving them the words can help. Like, let them know that they can do that. Parents too, you can do that.
Yeah.
You're right.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. Is there anything that we left out? I think we hit everything on our notes. Yeah. I think we
got it all. I think we got it all. And anything we missed, any extras will be in the takeaways.
Yes. Yes, as always. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. And like Annie said, this will be turned into a blog, some key takeaways, just to add to that tool. What's it called? Tool. Can you tell how I've never done anything like labor related in my life? What is it? A toolkit?
Yeah.
The word. Just do it for me. A toolkit, right?
Yeah.
of educational resources for you and your family to have to help you in those moments. And like we said, when advocacy feels hard or you don't know where to start or what even the definition of it is in terms of like what it looks like for you. That's something that is just a quick resource to turn to. And then always we have Annie. We have you.
Please.
HIE.support, right? That's how they get in or email, right? But that's the best way to get in contact with you. And you can individualize and their care. And it's just, you're a wonderful resource to have. And I say it every time, but we're really grateful to have you. And we just thank you for all the work that you've done with our families and how, our initiatives with Child Life Specialists are going to continue to grow in the future. So thanks again. And to everyone who joined us, we appreciate you, and pay attention and look out for those key takeaways and this video to be uploaded onto YouTube very soon. Until the next time.
Bye. Thank you.